Good morning, Hannah. Thank you for joining us. We have a variety of sessions happening this morning, so 3 that are focusing on various components of our math learning this year. And the 4th session is about how we may bring out the Indigenous pieces from our curriculum and how we may embed that or draw it out and heighten our attention to it. Good morning, High Park. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure there's lots of excitement at the schools as people are shuffling around, getting into their breakout room. Because I'm already in it. Okay. It's like comes up. Oh, there's 11 o'clock. Getting ready to start.
Yeah. Should we wait a few minutes?
Yeah, we'll wait a moment or two.
Yep.
As people file in. Our session will be complete in 30 minutes. We've run through it a couple of times, so we know we have some time to share information. And if you have questions that pop up, we do have some time to address them. But sometimes we may just say thank you for the question, and we will address it in resources that we send out afterwards. So thank you very much for joining us. So Gretchen was able to find some music for us today. And who were the artists that you were talking about highlighting?
A Tribe Called Red.
Tribe Called Red.
And it's a really good Indigenous group, and I recommend using them in your classroom.
And it's a contemporary take on Indigenous music.
Traditional music.
Okay. I'm thankful for Bryce Grove persevering and getting through with their tech issues, so thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're going to get started.
Okay, so bonjour, my name is Gretchen Sands-Gamble, and I'm going to introduce myself in my language, in Anishinaabe. So bonjour, Gretchen Sands-Gamble, Indishnikaz, Pakajanam Territory in Dunjaba, Mjikan Dodom, Anishinaabe Ndao. And so what I just said was, hello, my name is Gretchen Sands-Gamble. I am from Pakajanam Territory, also known as Walpole Island. I'm Turtle Clan, and I'm Anishinaabe woman. And I am the Elementary Indigenous Education Special Projects Teacher for our board.
And good morning, I'm Pam Gallant, and I'm one of the members of the elementary program team. My focus is on assessment and evaluation often, but Gretchen and I have partnered a lot this year to look at the Indigenous perspectives within a curriculum and do some learning together. So welcome everyone, and thank you for this new way of sharing professional learning. And like I said, the session will be complete in 30 minutes.
Great. So we want to start first with why we are talking about embedding Indigenous education in all areas of our curriculum. In 2008, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission started to the government started to pay more attention to the stories that the residential school survivors and their families were telling about the experience in residential school, the effects that was having on families even today. So they listened to thousands of stories of residential school survivors, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out with 94 calls to action, and they were for all Canadians to act upon, to try to right the wrongs of the past, of what happened in residential schools. And there are quite a few calls to action that are for school boards and the Ministry of Education and for teachers. And so regardless of the number of Indigenous students in your school, these calls to action are for everyone. And I like to draw attention to number 63.3. And I really feel that this is for us as teachers. We should be building student capacity for intercultural understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. For so long, Indigenous voices, perspectives, and contributions have been left out of the education system. And now we're in a time that we are seeing the value that Indigenous perspectives and voice and knowledge holds. So we're at a time where we know better, and now it's time for us to do better. And so the learning that we are doing together will help to develop respect and empathy. And it demonstrates that Indigenous history and stories have value in our schools and in Canadian society.
So it is our responsibility as teachers to teach the accurate history and share Indigenous perspectives. And so when we think about our learning today, we are going to be using the term Indigenous as a collective term to include First Nation people, Métis people, and Inuit people. But it's really important as we go closer to the learning experiences that we are mindful about who are the contributors that we're gathering information from or whose perspectives we're joining. So just as Gretchen mentioned, she shared her culture, her nation that she's from. So if we can find that out, it's the best. And some learning that I've had this year is about the word our and the word the. And so when I was often talking about students, I would say our First Nation students or our Métis students, and realizing that is a colonialized term. So I'm being mindful to change it to the First Nation people. And so I'm still working on that. So Gretchen and I are helping each other out to remember that. But it's really about getting to know people. And so the closer we can get to knowing the identity of people and honoring the diverse perspectives we have, the better we are as a nation.
So as Pam mentioned, we as teachers are required to teach the true, accurate history of the Indigenous people of this land and in relation to the government as well. And so that can include treaties, traditional territories, contributions of Indigenous leaders and role models, events and consequences, current events, and environmental issues. And sometimes these topics can be difficult to teach, but it is the true and accurate history, and that is what we are called to teach.
And we've learned this year that our curriculum is a great source for finding out what is to teach and what's grade appropriate to teach, so that developmental nature.
And so we as teachers are not responsible to teach the culture of the Indigenous people. So, and that can include 7 grandfather teachings, medicine wheels, cultural teachings around beading, crafts, and legends. But however, we are encouraging teachers to invite visitors from local First Nations to share their culture with our students. And I think it's important to note at this time that at the moment we are asking schools to please refrain from using the 7 grandfather teachings as character education and programming in their schools. While the 7 grandfather teachings are really important and excellent teachings, there's a lot more to them than can be taught in school. And we want to make sure that they are respected as the sacred teachings that are taught over a long period of time through ceremonies.
And just having learning experiences along with Gretchen this year, these are the questions that she's really great about having, is helping us define when we can do that by using the curriculum and when we need some support, invite some partners into our classrooms. And so this year, like we said, we've done some drawing out and trying to find the embedded nature of the Indigenous perspectives in our curriculum. And Gretchen and I have really focused on the language curriculum and the social studies history curriculum and working on that. We've learned together about it. And thank you for people that have participated in our after-school workshops about these topics already. But today we are focusing on different areas of the curriculum.
It is important to note that all curriculum subjects and grades have Indigenous histories and voices embedded throughout. So right now I just want you to take a second to think about the resources that you are using. You can easily choose books that are written by Indigenous people to complement your language arts program or your science lessons. There are many picture books, novels, videos online, teacher resources that are created by Indigenous people that you can use to add Indigenous perspectives and voice to your daily routines and lessons.
So we're going to work through a couple of examples from the French as a second language curriculum, the arts curriculum, the health and phys ed curriculum, And to our kindergarten educators out there, we know that through your sense of inquiry and play, you're bringing in the arts and phys ed and languages into your program. So hopefully you can find something that connects with the learning for your students. So our first area we're going to look at is how we may embed and drive the Indigenous perspectives in core French. And we've spoken with our language consultant, Mariah, to help us stay focused on that. She's presenting math today, so that's why Gretchen and I are alone. So we know with French, one of the goals of the French program is to have students speak in French with confidence. And so how that is developed is through the vocabulary you're sharing with your students. And asking questions and having them respond to questions is a great way for them to experience the language in that conversation stance.
So by providing conversation starters or provocations using resources that feature Indigenous people, you are making space for students to see Indigenous culture, families, and heroes represented. So, for example, here we have a photo of Georgian Tutu and some information about him in French. So teachers are able to embed Indigenous perspectives and contributions by using photos and resources featured and created by Indigenous people. So Georgian Tutu is actually the first Inuk man to play in the NHL.
I'm just thinking about the book that we shared this year with all the Indigenous heroes, and that many schools have the book in there. So if you're looking for other Indigenous people that have made contributions that we can honor in a positive way, that's a great resource there.
It's called Go Show the World by Wab Canoe. We'll have information about that, I think, in the resources. This is another example that you could use. It is actually a powwow flyer that is in the French language. And so this is really, I feel, really timely. Because I know that some of the French immersion schools went to powwow yesterday at Lambton College. So they could talk about the information that was found on this flyer and ask these questions here in French. And the kids could compare it to the powwow that they went to yesterday and just talk about some of the things that they saw there in the French language.
And this is a book that I've come to love this year. We used it in some of our after-school workshops called The Jingle Dancer, and learned so much about the culture and family relationships in this book. So students may know this book from reading it in their language program. So when you bring it into your French classroom, they may already have the context of being able to talk about what they see in the pictures or the family relationships within the book.
When talking about a picture or using pictures as provocations or conversation starters, it doesn't have to be from a book. It can be in any photo. So think about what photos you are using in your French class. Or I remember using them when I taught kindergarten too, having photos just posted around the room that the kids could look at and just talk about. So think about those photos of people in jobs or in various roles or in schools or doing things with their family. And ask yourself, have you included photos of Indigenous people in your conversation starters or in those photos around your room?
Again, we're just giving little snippets and ideas in our 30-minute session, so we'll be able to review your ideas and questions as well if we put them in the chat or send us an email afterwards. We're going to then move on to embedding and drawing out Indigenous perspectives in the arts. And so today when we're looking at our activity, we're really focusing on, the example is focused on the visual arts. But we want to draw our attention to, when we look at the curriculum, the overall expectations are the same for music, drama, and dance, and visual arts. Those overall expectations of creating and presenting, reflecting and responding and analyzing, and exploring forms and cultural contexts. So be mindful that the thinking that we have now about the arts, you can apply to the other strands of the arts.
And so by exploring the curriculum, we can find that all of the strands provide us with many opportunities to include Indigenous perspectives and contributions. In
this beautiful ledger.
This is a style of artwork that is actually from the Southwest, like the American Southwest. And It's called ledger art. And so this is an example of something that you could use in your classroom. It is a very distinct style from that area. And so what we are asking teachers to do is, instead of copying Indigenous artists who create works by using a very distinct style that is reflective of the symbols of their nation, have students create their own work as a response to a news story or an issue involving Indigenous people. Read poetry written by an Indigenous poet and create a piece of artwork. Explore plants that are native to the area that your school is in or where the students live with their families, and invite a visitor from a local First Nation to come in and speak about plants as medicines. The students could then create a natural art piece using plants or other objects found in nature as a response. So we often share works of art with students as inspiration for creating their own piece of art. By sharing works from Indigenous artists, we are acting to include Indigenous perspectives. Conversations, analysis, and learning can focus on identifying the feelings, issues, themes, and social concerns that the artists wish to convey.
And just also noticing too that we're moving from talking about Indigenous artists, but finding out more about where people are coming from. So we'll notice there's distinct styles from the Inuit art community, the woodland art community, and the West Coast art community. And just finding out who these artists are and what's important to them.
And also talking about what nation they are from as well. So these paintings here are by an Ojibwe artist, Norval Morisseau. And so here's an example of how you can use these artworks in your French classroom as well. You can have kids talk in French about what animals they see. And in art class, you can talk about the different colors that the artists use and identify different animals. Talk about what they like or dislike. Describe the animals. You can talk about what maybe emotions the artist was trying to evoke with their artwork. In art analysis, students can look at the way the artists use lines and color. Students can then use the art not as a template or something to copy from, but as a way to consider how they will use line and color in their own work. In visual arts, students are to explore form and cultural context. Students are asked to demonstrate an awareness of a variety of works of art and artistic traditions from diverse communities.
And these beautiful examples are created by an Ojibwe artist, Isaac Murdoch, and Christy Belcourt joined him in the creation of these.
And she's a Métis artist.
Métis artist, yes, and created to bring attention to taking care of the water.
Okay, so these art pieces are to share. If you go to their website, people can print these pieces of artwork as often as they like. One thing that you can do in your classroom is you can share this information with the kids, and you can say, why do you think that these artists want to share these pieces? Why are they letting just anybody print them off for free? Should students copy these images and the symbols that are being represented by these artists? No, they should not. But students can look at these symbols and create their own posters about protecting the water or about another issue that they feel very strongly about.
Okay. And we can use these to describe how forms and styles of visual and media arts can be used to represent various messages and to demonstrate ways in which visual arts reflect the beliefs and traditions of the people. Mm-hmm. We have some people talking in the conversation chat pod, some great ideas. So yes, put them in there, and we won't always address them exactly right now, but we'll come back to them. And we are sending out a resource package, so we'll make sure we put the links into these particular Waters Life images. And then if you think about, often we start by, let's create some art, but if we switch it around and have at the end of our learning about the art, that's when students get to create. So they're not copying the art, but they're looking at it and say, how can I respond to this and create my own images and art forms about an issue that's important to me. And thinking about printmaking, an example here, you would learn about how these were all created and made, and then go in and learn, teach students how to do that themselves. But the item is about what's important to them. And then embedding and drawing out Indigenous perspectives in health and phys ed curriculum there. And we know that the health curriculum especially really focuses on identity. So if we think about what our students are exposed in, teachers, we can give students a variety of opportunities to learn about diversity and diverse perspectives. And by drawing the attention to the contributions of women and the perspectives of various ethno-cultural, religious, and racial communities, and the beliefs and practices of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, students from a wide range of backgrounds are able to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. It is essential that the learning activities in phys ed and all the other areas of the curriculum reflect the diversity of Ontario society.
And that's directly from the curriculum. Those words are from there. Okay, so OFIA has come out with a resource called Let's Get Moving that includes resources created in consultation with Indigenous people to use in phys ed classes. I've put all of the files in a Google Drive folder that we'll be sharing as a resource at the end. Many students in our schools enjoy playing lacrosse, and the game of lacrosse that is played today is adapted from the lacrosse game that was played by the Haudenosaunee people. It was a gift from the creator to help settle disputes and to be used as medicine. That is why we call it the medicine game. Many different nations have versions of lacrosse, or the stick and ball game as well. Having someone from a local First Nation come to your phys ed class to talk about the history and traditions of lacrosse is a great way to make space for Indigenous voices and stories to be shared.
We're going to give you a moment to read this through, and it's directly from the curriculum as well. So in our phys ed curriculum, there's the whole movement part of the curriculum, and it links so well with music and dance in the arts curriculum. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for ways that we can share that contemporary artist in music like we did at the start.
Mm-hmm. So when you choose music that you will include in your movement strands of phys ed or in your dance classes, choose music by contemporary Indigenous artists such as DJ Shub, A Tribe Called Red, or the Jerry Cans. And if you do a quick Google search of contemporary Indigenous artists, you will find lots.
Yeah. And on CBC Radio, they have done a great way showcase of showing in local and Canadian Indigenous artists as well. And this is one of the resources we came across. It's called Let's Powwow Sweat. And when I first came across it, I was like, well, is that cultural appropriation or a cultural appreciation? And so through some conversations, Gretchen and I, she's really shared with me that this is an example of cultural appreciation.
And the reason why this is cultural appreciation is this resource is created by Indigenous people. And so they created this resource to share on YouTube with everybody. And so since this was created by Indigenous people, it shares Indigenous voice, and it gives the Indigenous people who created it control over the image that is being shared. And for so long, our image we have not had control over it in the media. And so by using resources that are created by Indigenous people, you are sharing an accurate representation of the various nations.
Mm-hmm. And after yesterday's powwow experience, we hear so many students joined in the powwow dancing. Mm-hmm. So it would be great as a follow-up to bring that to our classrooms. Many of you may be aware of our LKDS Elementary Program Department blog, where we've done lots of the math sharing this year on the continuum strands and math games that many of you are playing in your classrooms. But I really want to give some acknowledgement to Gretchen for what she shared on the blog with Indigenous education. She's done a great job of helping us everything from the land acknowledgement to how you can embed Indigenous perspectives through storybooks. And she has many more things to share and post. So great job, Gretchen. And so we want to draw your attention to that tab in the elementary program page. It's going to continue to grow. Got some things coming up that are seasonal.
Yes.
Maple syrup.
Yes. Yep. So keep checking back there. And I have teacher resources on there, ways that you can use picture books in your classroom, and videos, information about treaties and residential schools. So just keep checking back there every once in a while. And
what's really nice about it too, it has the it's kind of like a little snapshot of the conversations you've been having with teachers about what's cultural appreciation, what's cultural appropriation, how to handle some questions you have about delivery of the curriculum. So it's very reflective of the contributions of our teachers in our board. So thank you for that. Oh, double clicking on that. How come we're not advancing? There we go.
So we want to take it back again to the calls to action. So call to action number 63.3, building capacity for intercultural understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. So again, regardless of the number of Indigenous students in your school, these calls to action are for everyone. The learning that we are doing together will help to develop respect and empathy. And not only does it give a feeling and a sense of belonging to the Indigenous students who attend our schools in the LKDSB, which is very important, but it also shares the message that Indigenous history and voices and stories and culture have a great value in our schools. And this is a message that gets sent to all the students and their families when they come in. And it is a very important message that needs to be sent.
Because maybe this is a reflection question at the end of it. So what holds value in your school or my school? So that are we helping our Indigenous, the Indigenous students see themselves in the learning and see their family dynamics and the culture and the history that they bring? Is it valued in our school?
Okay, so we just want to say miigwech. This has been really cool. And I'm really excited about it. Like
You're excited now. You're not nervous anymore.
I'm almost getting emotional about it. Like it's really exciting and great. And I think that this is so awesome that we've been given this opportunity. So there's my email address on there. If you have any questions, or if you have any ideas that you want to explore, can just send me an email. I really like to see what people are doing, because I know that there's a lot of really good stuff happening around Indigenous education and sharing Indigenous perspectives in our board, because I hear about it and I would just love to share that with everybody too. So there's my Twitter handle too if you want to find me on Twitter. So miigwech, thanks so much.
So just, I'm the data person.
Yes.
So there's 54 participants enrolled in our session today. But that's based on schools. And so if you could just maybe put the number of people that participated as your sign off today. So we'd like to know how many people we are reaching out to, because we know there's at least 54 of you. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any feedback about this style of learning, we'd like to hear that too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Miigwech.
Goodbye.
Just be great.